Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying,
Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?
Then said I, Here am I, send me. And he said,
Go! And you tell this people, hear ye indeed,
but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today our study in the book of Job. Chapter 21 is where we're going to pick it up. Let me make sure I have enough. I got another chapter. I want to read 2 chapters. As is our custom. We will only cover 1 chapter, but we're going to read 2. Job replying, their arguments are pretty repetitive. They put different spins on it. And so now Job replies again. But Job answered and said, Hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolations. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. As for me, is my complaint to man? And if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? Mark me, and be astonished, and lay your hand upon your mouth. Even when I remember, I am afraid, and trembling taketh hold on my flesh. Wherefore do the wicked live, become old, yea, are mighty in power? Their seed is established in their sight with them, and their offspring before their eyes. Their houses are safe from fear, neither is the rod of God upon them. Their bull gendereth, and faileth not. Their cow calveth, and casteth not her calf. They send forth their little ones like a flock, and their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp, and rejoice at the sound of the organ. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. Therefore they say unto God, Depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? Lo, their good is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. How oft is the candle of the wicked put out? And how oft cometh their destruction upon them? God distributeth sorrows in his anger. God distributeth sorrows in his anger. They are as stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. God layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? Shall any teach God knowledge, seeing he judgeth those that are high? One dieth in his full strength, being whole, at ease, and quiet. His breasts are full of milk, and his bones are moistened with marrow. And another dieth in the bitterness of his soul, and never eateth with pleasure. They shall lie down alike in the dust, and the worms shall cover them. Behold, I know your thoughts, and the devices which ye wrongfully imagine against me. For ye say, Where is the house of the prince? And where are the dwelling places of the wicked? Have ye not asked them that go by the way? And do ye not know their tokens? that the wicked is reserved to the day of destruction? They shall be brought forth to the day of wrath. Who shall declare his way to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? Yet shall he be brought to the grave, and shall remain in the tomb. The clods of the valley shall be sweet unto him, and every man shall draw after him, as there are innumerable before him. How then comfort ye me in vain, seeing in your answers there remaineth falsehood? That's probably one of my favorite chapters right there so far. Obviously, there's quite big chapters to come. Let's go on to 22. Then Eliphaz the Temanite. One moment here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, Can a man be profitable unto God, as he that is wise may be profitable unto himself? Is it any pleasure to the Almighty that thou art righteous? Or is it gain to him that thou makest thy ways perfect? Will he reprove thee for fear of thee? Will he enter with thee into judgment? Is not thy wickedness great, and thine iniquities infinite? For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for naught, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Thou hast not given water to the weary to drink, and thou hast withholden bread from the hungry. But as for the mighty men, as he hath, I don't know where I got the as, he had the earth, and the honorable man dwell in it. Thou hast sent widows away empty, and the arms of the fatherless have been broken. Therefore snares are round about thee, and sudden fear troubleth thee, or darkness that thou canst not see, and abundance of waters cover thee. Is not God in the height of heaven? And behold, the height of the stars, how high they are. And thou sayest, How doth God know? Can he judge through the dark cloud? Thick clouds are covering to him that he seeth not, and he walketh in the circuit of heaven. Excuse me. Thick clouds are a covering to him that he seeth not, and he walketh in the circuit of heaven. Hast thou marked the old way which wicked men have trodden, which were cut down out of time, whose foundation was overthrown with a flood, which said unto God, Depart from us, and what can the Almighty do for them? Yet he filled their houses with good things. But the counsel of the wicked is far from me. The righteous see it, and are glad, and the innocent laugh them to scorn, whereas our substance is not cut down, but the remnant of them the fire consumeth. Acquaint now thyself with him, and be at peace, thereby good shall come unto thee. Receive, I pray thee, the law from his mouth, and lay up his words in thine heart. If thou return to the Almighty, thou shalt be built up. Thou shalt put away iniquity far from thy tabernacles. Then shalt thou lay up gold as dust, and the gold of Ophir as the stones of brooks. Yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver. For then shalt thou have thy delight in the Almighty, and shalt lift up thy face unto God. Thou shalt make thy prayer unto him, and he shall hear thee, and thou shalt pay thy vows. Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways. When men are cast down, then thou shalt say, There is lifting up, and he shall save the humble person. he shall deliver the island of the innocent, and it is delivered by the pureness of thine hands. Okay, so now we need to go over again. Very interesting. He gets right down to it, doesn't he? And it sounds almost it sounds remarkably like the prosperity gospel. Turn to Jesus and pay your vows and do what you're supposed to do, and you're going to be rich and everything's going to go right for you. That's what he's saying. And he's wrong. And so sometimes people will go to these things, they'll read it. Now, there's part, it's like Job. Let's go back to what Job says, of course, but I find Eliphaz's response, they double down really hard. I mean, it gets worse. Early on, they are nearly comforting. I mean, compared to this one. And also his arrogance. I mean, this is why he says, you make yourself strange to me. You know, your iniquity is infinite. So they don't believe him. They think, no. Even your denials are making it worse. I mean, that's the attitude. I don't think they specifically, yeah, they sort of say that. That's why they're saying, confess. Makes me think of, confess, the Spanish Inquisition. Bring out the comfy chair. But again, or the soft pillows. The comfy chair. If it would to God it was such, that's right there. You're pretty ironic. All right. Hear diligently in my speak. Let this be. I love this. Like I said, this Job chapter. I love this chapter. Let this be your consolations. What's he mean by that? Let this be your consolations. Okay, here we go. I just wanted to get it on the screen. There we go. All right, Job 21, consolations. It says, well, all one word. Notice that's all highlighted. It says consolation, whatever. This is a quick definition. Tanchum, whatever. It says big capital letters there. Tan, a comfort, consolation, compassion, solace derived from the root, which means to comfort or console. Okay. So it's just, I generally trust their the translation when we're talking about the thrust. Let this be your consolations. Comfort. Okay, I want to see why he thinks this might be comforting to them. Or at least, what he's saying, I just want to have my say, and then after I'm done, I'm going to shut up. And you can just keep mocking. And that's how he sees it as mocking him. Because it's like they're treating him like an evildoer, and he hasn't done anything wrong. Job hasn't done anything to deserve this. Because here's the thing, and also when I was reading what his response is, Eliphaz's response, his next response, he starts talking about things like the flood, you notice. And, looking back on that history, it's easy to, here's the thing, it's easy to look back and say like, well, why did that happen? They were all bad, and maybe that's true. And that explains why the wicked suffer. But as Job says, he admits how oft the wicked do meet their end, how oft they do suffer the consequences of their doings. And this is true. This is something people detect. That's the kind of thing that Jordan Peterson talks about. But it can't account for the fact that, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you work hard and do your best and tell the truth, and it doesn't, and things go badly, at least as far as you end up dead. Like Jesus said, that's no big deal. Because as long as you're sticking to the truth, it isn't a big deal. As long as you're doing what's right in God's sight, it is, not just your own sight, in God's sight. You got to be careful. Our own sight can be a bit fuzzy. So right now, a lot of people think, oh, let's support Israel. Oh, we should fight Yemen. Absolutely not. And that will still lead to World War III. It's like we're just fighting another part of it. Suffer me that I may speak, and after I've spoken, there you go, mock on. Anything interesting, mock on? Yeah, mock, deride, whatever, stammer. Stammer from the root idea of it. Okay, so the mock on. As for me, my complaint, what he's saying is, am I complaining to man? No, my complaint, and it is not wrong to pour out your complaint to God. In fact, where's the word complaint? And there might be like a legal thing, like when you have a legal thing, a complaint. Let's see. No, it's not like that, I guess. Hold on, there we go. Meditation, complaint, talk, communication, a contemplation or utterance. From a root verb which means to muse, to meditate, or speak. Primarily refers to the act of meditating or musing, or often in a reflective or contemplative manner. It can also denote a form of communication, whether it be a complaint, a conversation, or a thoughtful discourse. So it's going to be context dependent. So here it makes sense that the King James translators chose complaint. Well, let's look at some of the other places that it pops up. Over here on the Englishman's Concordance. And that gives you, every time this Hebrew word is used, it gives you every occurrence. I have the paperback version of this. Not the paperback, the printed on paper. It's not paperback, it's hardcover. All right, great concern and provocation. Out of the abundance of complaint and grief, this is King James. Either he is talking or he is pursuing. That's, for he is a God. Oh, that's Elijah talking about Baal, disputing with the prophets of Baal. Either he is talking, it's not quite so, it's more like he's meditating or musing or, he's busy. Or pursuing, he's probably in his workshop doing something. He's busy. And that was the one thing when they talk about, is God, the idea that God isn't paying attention, that he doesn't care, that Eliphaz also touched on that. And his communications. So anyways, you see it's used as complaint in several, it's translated by different translations, complaints many times. It's I poured out my complaint to him before the Lord. I'm sure it's the Lord, because that's Psalm 142. It's probably not going to be before man. I poured out my complaint to man, because man would save me. Most of our problems are not problems we need people to solve for us. The most pressing things that men suffer from are problems that have to do with their relationship with God. And by that I mean, your relationship, it's like, one, that we have some sort of existing sort of relationship with God, and also that our lifestyle reflects whatever our understanding and our conscience happens to be, what God wants us to do. However he hath shown thee, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of thee, but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with thy God. However that's delineated out in a lot of different ways. Love your neighbor as yourself, love the Lord God. In so many multitudes of ways that has to be applied. So God is the one he is addressing here. And if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? If it were so, if I was complaining to man, why should my spirit not be troubled? I'm trying to... I think, is my complaint to man, and if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? Well, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but certainly because of his innocence, whether he's complaining to God or man, and I think he's saying, I'm not complaining to man, but if I was, why wouldn't I be troubled? Either way. Because like you said before, everyone's treating me like garbage now. Mark me. Take a look. See what's happened. Be astonished. Lay your hand upon your mouth. So people often, it's a very ancient thing. You know, it's like this is not like, people didn't invent that 50 years ago. Even when I remember, I am afraid, and I already lived through it. He's like, I endured it. Here I am. Now I'm arguing with you guys about it. That's miserable. You know what I mean? But when I think back on it, well, here I am. And trembling taketh hold on my flesh. Why do the wicked live? Wherefore do the wicked live? Become old, yea, are mighty in power. Their seed is established in the sight with them, and their offspring for the... Because when he says this, how often I have seen that it is true. The wicked eat the consequences of their doings. You reap what you sow. But sometimes people sow a lot of wickedness in the earth and just get richer and richer and then have kids, seem to get, and here's the thing. As the Psalm say, don't envy the wicked when you see them prosper in his ways. No. That is just their ultimate end. And that Job also always affirms that, well, he's like, I affirm that they're going to die, but, a lot of times they die, peacefully when they're old. Everyone, when you die in peace, you quickly die. He says they quickly die. Where is that? They're animals. It's not like everything goes wrong. And so, no, occasionally I've seen the really wicked people, and everything seems to be going right. And yeah, you could think of a lot of kings of the earth in that category. People, as they get more powerful, the tendency for power to corrupt, that's one of the reasons, that's part of what I think why we exist in this world as a precursor to becoming the sons of God. It's just because we understand corruptibleness. God is incorruptible, but you think about it, he has access to all I don't think, if you're going to be, if we're going to be supposed to be partakers with him in all these amazing things and great and wonderful promises, it's like the idea that we would be unaffected by our experiences in this life. No, it doesn't make sense. They send forth their little ones like a flock, their children dance. They take the timbrel and harp and rejoice in the sound of the organ. The bones of the people they killed to get all that stuff right. Sometimes that's the case. They spend their days in wealth and in a moment go down to the grave. Their deaths, most people want a quick death. We're saying it's not like they have like this slow, agonizing death. No, they just they die one day. And therefore so when you see people prosper doing evil, and some of the wealthiest people in the world got their wealth illicitly, at least in the gray areas, or certainly using underhanded and dirty tactics or whatever. I mean, certainly, I'm not saying they don't work hard. But some of the things they do, and it just is. There is plenty of evil in the world. And we don't always see it punished. And so people think, well, if I follow their ways, I can prosper too. Why would I want knowledge of God's ways when, what's it going to profit me? It's far more profitable to look out for numero uno, and to, if that means take advantage of my neighbor, maybe destroy my neighbor so I can take all that he's built. If I destroy all my enemies, then I win, and my children fill the land. And a lot of the history of the earth is written that way. I mean, even our own country. It's like people came here and supplanted. We didn't supplanted them, but they're still around. But I mean, it's like, I'm glad we didn't make them extinct. Like so many places that happened. In the ancient world, when people would come invade a land, they often did not spare any. Except that, some of the women and the little ones, if they thought they were useful for slaves or for wives, and that's what they did. Many ancient people. That's what happened a lot of times. Now these guys, Eliphaz and them, this whole thing sounds like it's written in a period of peace. When you look back, well, those people, bad things happened to them because they were bad. And as I pointed out when we did Daniel was carried into captivity. I didn't see. Daniel is faithful to the Lord. And no evidence that he was less than faithful before that. But he goes into captivity with everybody else. He becomes a eunuch with the other young men. And just like I said, when the captivities came, it happened to everybody. Everyone suffered. And that happens. Like I said, when we can't just act like the things we do, like forever, there's going to be no impunity. Our children or our grandchildren may have to pay the price. The last generation was so selfish. They looted the treasury and filled themselves with wealth, borrowing money. Now, a lot of people, it was not their choice. But those in power in the previous generation, they voted themselves lots of benefits and spent a lot of money on war. And undermining governments all on this world empire dream. Which one time I thought, well, maybe we should, because we're good, aren't we? But we're not. The empire we want to bring to the world is not an empire of goodness, all right? But that's a dream that will never come to pass, I think. Unless, Satan himself come and heal the thing. This beast, I do not think, is going to run. We'll see. I don't know. We will see. Lo, their good is not in them. It's not in their hand. Let me see. Did I jump ahead too far? The children, the prosperity. No, that's pretty good. Their seed established in their sight with them, their offspring. That's something people very valuable. Let me tell you this. You see your children right. When you see your children established, when you see them start to branch out on their own and start their own families and stuff, that is very gratifying. Grandchildren are a very gratifying thing to see, because especially when it's like, they're married and stuff. That's always a good thing. It's not like, well, my daughter's pregnant and didn't want that to happen, and where's the guy? Who knows? All that kind of stuff. But in some ways, whatever. So the wicked, and the wicked, and he's just saying the wicked, people who are worthy of what Job is suffering. Not just garden, like it says, Job himself has not said, I'm sin-free. But God has already indicated to Satan that God has nothing against him. That we already know this. He serves God. Even if that's imperfectly. It's like, he doesn't do nasty things, evil things, wicked things. Things that mean that God should punish, like Sodom and Gomorrah, leave you completely destitute. Even in this world, because sometimes people do things in this world and they get what they got coming. Sometimes people, they do all kind. Sometimes they go too far, they get too greedy, and then they get caught. You can think of numerous examples. I'm not going to name anybody, because sometimes like I said, there are plenty of examples. We know the world is a place filled with a lot of people who do not honor God. And it's become more apparent. And they used to be like the people with lip service, but now they openly, are hostile to Christianity. And that's it, honestly, why one of the things I think is that I think the ginning up of hostility towards Muslims is ill-advised. I said, when I started thinking about, why did God make them? I mean, why did God allow them to exist? As far as why do you allow that religion to come into being? So it's like, oh, do the people of the Middle East serve Jesus for naught? Why put a sword to their throat and they'll turn from you? I mean, it's like, and then now they're in darkness and they don't know. Possibly. From my perspective. But what does that mean? To me, that's like I've said in the past, the Samaritans, they didn't get Judaism quite right. And the Jews absolutely hated them. And now they do to the Muslims of their region, and the Christians, by the way, the Arabs. It's an ethnic thing more than it is religious. Well, at least as far as against on the Palestinian side. I don't mean to deter into politics too much, but I always reserve the right to. This is not a charity. This is not a 501c3. I can talk all I like about politics if I think it's pertinent. What is the Almighty that we should serve Him? We should fear God. We do not, I think about all the things. It's like people just aren't aware. It's like, hey, did you hear that story about the Israeli prison where they were videotaping themselves raping the prisoners? Okay. And didn't that, if you didn't hear about it, I'm like, oh, you didn't hear about that? And actually, then they protested for those guys. They should be allowed to, because this is the law of who, not of Moses. We should be allowed to do this to these people because of whatever. Because of the delusion they have about, God wants to do all this stuff for us, and no matter what, He's behind us and all that. And that is really dangerous thinking. Because God is not behind anybody, no matter what they do. Ask Judas Iscariot. Ask Ananias and Sapphira. You lie to the Holy Ghost. Don't think, don't, you know what I mean? If you take that attitude to think that, I don't really need to serve God. I can serve my own interests. What profit should we have if we pray to Him? That's what we're looking for, profits. Is it profitable? I said it reminds me of prosperity gospel. People want to have profit when they pray. And why should I pray to a God who's not going to profit me? That's what they think. And they don't mean, hey, the Apostle Paul says, hey, that you may prosper as your soul prospers. It's good to prosper. But to prosper in the most important things is most important. When I was young, I remember reading the story of, I forget sometimes that I did this to myself. I remember reading the story of Solomon and how God said, ask what you want, I'll give it to you. And he asked for wisdom to rule God's people. And so you could have asked for riches, you could have asked for all these things. Because you've asked this, I will give that to you, and I will give you the riches. And I said, I really don't want the riches. Just give me the wisdom. I'm glad that He let me off on the, I never want to see a sign or anything like that. I'm glad He let me off on that one. I didn't see anything, actually. That's true. But I remember reading about Thomas, who believed without having seen. I've seen enough, for me, from my mind's eye. I felt it. That's enough. Lo, their good is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. I want to see what the NIV does with that. Or any really translation. NIV. But I'll go to the NIV just because it's considered a good one. But like I said, it's an interpretive thing. But my complaint directed to a human being? Why should I not be impatient? Look at me and be appalled. Okay, where's the verse one? The little ones. Often, a little up. Oh, there we go. Their prosperity is not in their own hands. So I stand aloof from the plans of the wicked. Okay. So if it's like, if your prosperity, what would it say? Like, their good is not in their hand. Oh, okay, yeah. It's just an idiom of like, it's not in your control. The good that you're going to get, though you seem to have it. You know, like Jesus said, to him that hath shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But him that seemeth to have shall be taken even that which he, no, but to him that hath not shall be taken even that which he seemeth to have. I like to quote Luke on that one, because I like that it's added in what he seems to have. Because it's like, you can't take from someone that something they don't have, right? But the illusion of having something can be broken. And that illusion for many people is that somehow it's okay to not follow the ways of the Almighty, to obtain the knowledge of God's ways, or to, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of this as it's gone out already. A lot of people understand this already. We kind of know. We have a conscience. We know right and wrong. So when they go to war, they have a doctrine. What's our excuse? We make up excuses. Well, they have verses to excuse their violence. I mean, there are verses in the Bible people could use to justify all kinds of things, like handling snakes and stuff. Like jumping off buildings. Satan tried to use that on Jesus. Jump off the building. Hey, his angels will catch you. That's what it says. Don't you believe the Bible? Or well, he misinterpreted it. It's like, he misquoted it. Whatever. It still happens. People still have that attitude, that magical thinking, like nothing bad can happen. No, nothing bad can happen like separating you from God's love. But you can be separated from your living life, and it happens to every generation. How often does the candle of the wicked put out? Oh, yes, it definitely happens. How oft cometh their destruction upon them? Because, the time's innumerable. People cut down. Go down ingloriously. Think about some of the kings in the Old Testament, blinded and thrown in prison. They are as stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. That's true. Job isn't denying that the fruits of evil are not good. And that's fine, but why, it doesn't explain why does this happen. We understand why it happens to the wicked. But why does it happen to the righteous? Bad things happen to the wicked because of their wickedness. Okay, fine. When one is wicked, but what about when bad things happen to good people, quote unquote? There's no one good, no, not one but God. Right. But God still says, hey, serve me and live, do these things, obey me, and I'm going to be good to you. I love you, people, right? We believe, Certainly those people that do it, God, when people find God's ways and pray to him and desire his knowledge, that's evidence that he loves them, because he loved us first. And if that is in me, if that questing, that seeking, then that is something that God himself has inspired. We have to be someone inspired to go on this quest to find the living God. He's not obviously just revealing himself to everybody. He layeth up his iniquity. I'm not going to take this, but I just want to stop it. It's potential spam anyways. Stubble before the wind. Stubble is the very sort of lightest, like grass clippings, except less than that, really. It's when they would do, whatever. A lot of times in harvest, when they would do the winnowing process, you'd have the stuff separated into but it's like the most fine hay, basically, like the most fine dried vegetable material you could think of, stuff that would catch on fire real easily. Also that blow, and so is chaff, similar. Chaff and stubble. Chaff is what I was thinking of, is like the seed husks and stuff when they would do like the wintering process. So he layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. God does our iniquity. If you don't think your iniquity affects your children, it does. Especially when we give ourselves to iniquity. When we are not, when we're conscientiously avoiding iniquity and doing doing everything God is, doing all we can to be obedient to Him. So where sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I'm not as helpful as I want to be. Sometimes I'm a little selfish, or something, or sometimes I'm caught between things, and I don't know if I made the right decision. There's plenty of that, but I'm not. I don't have people in cages in my basement, and we don't have that. None of us are that bad. Good. It's because you fear God. Not the people in cages. I don't know what you do with the people in cages necessarily, but I'm just saying bad things. When you're not stealing from your neighbor, you're not defrauding your cousins, and treating people. There's all kinds of ways people do take advantage of each other. But it's a foolish thing to do, because God will not let it go. And the thing is, when we do things, when we have iniquity in our lives, it affects our kids. It will affect them. And Ezekiel talks about how it's not like fate, like their children have to be. But the thing is, your children are related to you. They're your children. They got part of you in them, right? And when we raise them in iniquity, especially when it's like something, I'm not talking about like, oh, you got some little secret sin, not that shouldn't be concerning. I mean, when it's like you're teaching your children to do the same things you do, like it might be whatever, whether it be thievery, underhandedness, viciousness, wrath, all like the fruits of the flesh, the works of the flesh, as they're called. Anger, wrath, malice, and all that stuff. A lot of times we hand them our sins. I saw it on someone not too long ago. I saw a parent that was like really like talking to their children in a very sharp way, but that was impotent. And then they kind of were slamming right back at him. And I was like, I thought, what's the point of that? Now you just have children that talk rudely to you. He rewardeth him, and he shall know it. It's like he very often people get what they got coming, but not always. Happens a lot. That's why it's foolish to go do that. Because here's the thing. For every person who compromised their morality and stuff to gain fame and fortune and did it, for every person who did that, there's hundreds of people, probably thousands, who made shipwreck of their lives. Pursuing the same foolish path. And they end up seeing it. There's all kinds of people hit rock bottom. And then they end up seeing. Sometimes that can be one of the point where redemption can happen. Like Eliphaz says, hey, turn to God. If it was true, if Job was just like he's describing the wicked here, if he was one of them, well then he should repent, like as he said, pray to God, He will receive you. See how that same, though I do compare it to the prosperity gospel. only because of like the naive thought that it's just all rainbows and unicorns once you accept Jesus and start giving your tithes, you know. And God wants you to have a Rolls Royce. He wants everyone to have a Rolls Royce and a mansion. He wants to build mansions in heaven, even though that's not what that means. He wants to come in and make his mansion with you is actually what happened. What it says later on, he says, if a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him and make our abode with him, which is the same word translated mansion in the King James just earlier in that chapter, which is John chapter 14. His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. You know, I've paid for some of my sins like that. Yes, sir. You know, that happens. Anyone, touch a hot stove, you get burned. Because that's the thing, is like the rod of God is far from them. Because I endure the rod of God. It's on me. That's the rod of correction. Job, he talked about his sins of his youth. They say, you're drinking them up. You've never left them behind. The rod of God is what turns a young man, which to me is any man under 40, into a full-grown man. A man of years. Like they were like, hey, Jesus, you're not even 50. Because just not that that's should be against people who are younger. I'm very impressed with a lot of young people. I was a pretty smart young person. It's just I also know I learned a lot in the time intervening. I mean, if you start off in the right place, you can rise a lot faster as far as with your understanding, because when we get, like I said, some people when they teach, they like to. Teaching kids to swim, they think, oh, just throw them in at the deep end, and they'll swim. Like, yeah, they'll resent you too. I mean, a little bit. I mean, it's kind of rough. I mean, maybe they'll think it was cool. I don't know, but like, I'm not of that school necessarily. You don't necessarily do that to people. And so, I don't know. Well, what I mean by that is like, when I was young, I started off studying with a teacher who was a false teacher. I regard him as a false teacher, and he had a lot of things wrong. So it's like learning the Bible is trying to like learn to swim by having someone throw you in, and also there was an old man there trying to drown you. I was like, there's a funny analogy, but it's true. As far as that's how I look at it, like trying to get a proper understanding in that context is very difficult. Learning to swim in that context, you kind of have to rid yourself of the old man, and that's actually what I ended up doing. Especially because I saw the behavior of a lot of people. When I saw the kind of cultic personality type things that people were doing, it wasn't. I think he inspired it. He didn't seem to actually desire it. As far as like not personally, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? I don't know men's motives. For what pleasure hath he in his house after him, when the number of his months is cut off in the midst? Again, that's like the when you don't live to that full age, you don't get to see all those things happen. When you lose all those things and everything goes away. And he's sort of alluding to Job, because now Job is not, necessarily at the end of his life. I mean, he is at probably grandfather age. I mean, he didn't have any grandchildren mentioned just yet, right? His children were all kind of grown, but kind of going around and still, whatever. I don't know. So it didn't talk about that. And he says, shall any teach God knowledge? Seeing he judgeth those that are high. One dieth in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. I don't know precisely what does he mean by he judges? Well, he judges those I mean, all the high ones, all the exalted people on the earth, everyone gets judged. Even if they're exalted and they're evil, they're going to stand. They're going to be judged. And it's like, and what he's saying is, shall he teach God knowledge? It's an indication of his trust in God. God knows everything. You know, he knows all the ways of men, of all things. And he judges all of them. Even the high ones who think they're above God's judgment. Even those who think, I don't have to follow the ways of the Most High. They're high in their own eyes. They're exalted in their own eyes. Woe to them who are exalted in their own eyes, and prudent in their own sight, that are mighty to drink wine. You know, was one of the things. One dieth in his full strength, being wholly at ease and quiet. His breasts are full of milk. His bones are moistened with marrow. Now, obviously, those are metaphors. His breasts, that's an interesting line. This is like, all right, I can't help it. That's obviously a transgender male, right? His breasts are full. His bones are most. Anyways, I'm just kidding. Because because she identifies as a he. Get it? His breasts. But anyways, the point is, what does that mean? That's the breasts are the things that women used to supply their children with feeding. It's just a metaphor. Like, what about when the wicked's breasts are full? Well, he's able to supply. That's all it's saying. His bones are moistened with marrow. I don't know what he means by moistened. I guess because the marrow is, we understand the marrow is a very important part of the bone. I don't know how much they understood that. But when you look into the bones of animals and you see the marrow in there, I'm sure they thought this has some important function. And also it's considered, a tasty part of, eating animals, the marrow of the bone. There's a lot of ancient artifacts where they have sites where humans were breaking open the bones of animals to get at the marrow. And they know it was humans because they could see the tool marks. It wasn't, otherwise you'd see animals' teeth marks in it, but it was obviously tools. So his breasts, his bones are moistened with... I was going to go actually see if that's translated any different. Where is it? Okay. Verse 24. Sorry, I didn't take that with me. Oh. Yeah, they just say well-nourished in body, bones rich with marrow in the NIV. That's the only difference. It's like I said, it just means healthy, strong, both, not just, that's a physical picture of an overall picture of well-being. And that's obvious from the context. Another dieth in the bitterness of his soul and never eateth with pleasure. And he's just attributing, God knows this. I can't teach God anything about this. My complaint is to him, mostly because I don't know why. And so I'm trying to understand. I'm musing this. This is my meditation. Like I said, my complaint, my musing, whatever you want to say. What I'm thinking about is I don't understand. While I can explain the fact that the wicked don't always suffer these things, but I do. Sometimes they get away with it. And sometimes others, they die in the bitterness of soul, never eateth with pleasure. Like I said, this is to me like, the heartbreak of Hollywood type thing. I mean, Hollywood is very sinful. To succeed there requires some compromise. If you don't think it does, it's very difficult otherwise. And anyone who can do that without compromising, God bless them. But that kind of thing, it's like, and oftentimes it tends to corrupt people. What you're willing to do to get into that position, what you're willing to, how much of your own principles in everything, not just Hollywood, but like business and other endeavors, when the temptation is to become unjust or unfair or outright defrauding, oppressing people, others, they both lay down with dust, and worms shall cover them. Whether you live a nice long life and die in peace or die miserably, you still die, and you end up with the worms covering them. Behold, I know your thoughts and the devices which you wrongfully imagine against me. For you say, where is the house of the prince? Where do you find the prince? And where is the dwelling places of the wicked? And they're saying, well, the wicked are far from the good things of God, and the prince that God has anointed, well, they get all the blessings. Have you not asked them to go by the way? And do you not know their tokens? That's probably people, who have sort of gone before you. Like, do you know what happens when it goes that way? And that the wicked is reserved to the day of destruction. I think he means, that ultimate day, the day of the Lord. And they shall be brought forth to wrath. Brought forth from where? The grave. I think that's what he is implying. So Job is a little bit subtle. But he is saying they should be brought forth. Reminds me when Jesus says, all that are in their graves shall hear their voice and shall come forth, some to the resurrection of life and others to the resurrection of damnation. And that's what Job is talking about. There is the resurrection of damnation and the day of wrath, when they shall see the true fruit. Yes, death, but not alike to all. For some, there awaits life everlasting and joy forevermore. Who shall declare his way to his face? And who shall repay him what he hath done? The Lord, the judge, will sit on that throne and declare him his way to his face. This is what but also their own conscience will bear witness against them. Yet shall be brought to the grave and shall remain in the tomb. Yet shall he be brought to the grave. I do like the way that's phrased. That may not be precisely the Hebrew, but I like the idea of they remain in the tomb. They brought to the grave, and see, the clouds of the valley shall be sweet unto him. This is the good part. Being dead is the good part. Every man shall draw after him. People will gather after him, as there are innumerable before him. The grave is never full, and will continue to swallow up until the day when God calls them forth out of their graves. And the wicked and the righteous alike, and those who died miserably, and those who died happily, alike will lay there and wait. And it's almost like a sweet sleep that, imagine, it's like that night's sleep where as if no time passed at all. I'm not saying, though, when you wake up, it's going to feel refreshing. Depending on which resurrection you're waking up in is going to be determinative, or how the judge looks at you when you meet him on that day. Because he will make a reconciliation. That's what Job is taking faith in. God will take care of this. My beef with him is that I know his justice is true, but the truth is, this is his faith, sort of. But he doesn't have, like I said, he's sort of unsure about it at first. He's saying those things, that this is what must be. God must make a full end of everything. Otherwise, the world is unjust, and unfixably so. From the innumerable people before us to everyone who's going to come after us. The world's not a fair place or a just place. But God is. And that contradiction, it's not a true contradiction, but that conflict, it's a contradiction enough. I don't care. It's not like, everyone's like, things can be contradictory. There's a time for war and a time for peace. There's a time to embrace and refrain from embracing. There's contradictions. And they must be navigated. That's what wisdom is for, to understand when to rebuke a fool and when not to rebuke a fool, because there's different situations. That's what wisdom is for. So you go into different situations having wisdom. The clouds of the valley shall be sweet. How then Comfort ye me in vain, seeing your answers there remaineth falsehood. Again, he's like, you're completely wrong. You comfort. I think it's more of an how then comfort ye me in vain? Why do you bother comforting me in vain, or it's in vain? Because again, in a sense, they do try to comfort him with what we would call tough love, right? Tough love. Repent, Job. Do what's right. Turn to the Almighty. Job never turned from the Almighty, but they insist he did. They're wrong. All right, we'll look forward to being back again tomorrow. Should be here. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying,
Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?
Then said I, here am I, send me. And he said,
Go! And you tell this people, hear